Well, hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. What great news. We now have a backtrack from the CDC, a realization, an admission, really, in my mind, that overloading our children with vaccines was never a good idea, isn't a good idea. And so now we go from basically at most 88 doses for our children down to about 30 doses of vaccines. It reduces 17 diseases to 11 diseases. This is just the start. There's probably more vaccines that could be eliminated from the childhood schedule, but I want to go through why it's important. They dropped COVID, they dropped flu, they dropped hepatitis A and B, rotavirus, and meningococcal vaccine as well. So those things have come off. Now, why is this important and where are we headed? We're going to talk about that today on the program. Before we do, though, folks, I want to tell you about an amazing new product from the wellness company. Look, we are coming up on the new year, right? Everybody's got a New Year's resolution. What if I told you this new product from the wellness company called Drop can help you lose the pounds? Not a gimmick. It is not a crash diet or a quick fix. It is a daily prescription-free, flavorless liquid peptide supplement. It supports weight management by targeting GLP-1, GIP, and other metabolic pathways. It works with your body, not against it. The core ingredient is retatrutide, a breakthrough peptide studied for its ability to regulate appetite, improve metabolism, and help the body use energy more effectively. Combined with MCT oil and mineral-rich Irish sea moss, Drop becomes a powerful tool to curb cravings while gently raising your energy. Drop is an investment in you and your health. Use promo code GRANT100 to save $100 on your next order of Drop. Go to twc.health/grant and make 2026 the best year ever. Don't forget to use that promo code Drop. Let's get the show. Promo code GRANT100. Let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, welcome everybody. My guest today is Dr. James Thorpe. He is also with the Wellness Company. Great to have you on, Dr. Thorpe, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Grant.
All right, Doc, you've been on the forefront of calling out America for this wild vaccine schedule that I believe was just simply too many doses going to our children. Your reaction to President Trump's Truth Social post and then RFK Jr. and the CDC director basically saying, hey, we're dropping the doses by 55 doses.
Well, I'm ecstatic. I find it remarkable when you look at the chain of command. This came from President Trump, directly from President Trump to Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mr. Kennedy, to the CDC director, who is not even a physician. His last name is Mr. O'Neill. So this is really stunning because they really bypassed all the nonsense from ACIP. ACIP is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. And I think it was a real wise move because it's so important. We are now more in line with our peer countries. So, we got to keep in mind, there's a major lawsuit that's being directed towards several different entities because there has never been a study, even a prospective observational study of all these vaccines combined, which would need to have done in order to legitimize the ridiculous schedule that President Trump, Kennedy, and O'Neill just put into action.
I don't want to gloss over this because when you think about what you just said, that there was never a real study to look at the effects. I guess they call it a blind, placebo-based study. I'm going to play a clip from RFK Jr. before he was HHS secretary, but this is during a congressional hearing. And he talks about this, and he talks about asking the higher-ups about it, and they refuse to acknowledge it because it didn't exist, those studies you talk about. Take a listen.
Said publicly that I've been dishonest about that. Can you show us a single pre-licensing safety trial, placebo-controlled safety trial for any of the 72 vaccines required for American children? And he made that show of looking through a file, and he said, well, they're back in Bethesda. And I said, will you send them to me? And I never heard from him again, so we sued the HHS under the Freedom of Information Law. After a year of litigation, they sent us a letter which is posted on CHD's website that acknowledges that they are now not able to locate a single pre-licensing safety trial, placebo-controlled, for any of the vaccines that are now mandated for children. These are zero liability vaccines. I'm not anti-vaccine, but I think we need to be honest and we need to have good science. I spent 30 years trying to get mercury out of the fish in this country, and nobody ever called me anti-fish.
So that's one of his famous lines. Doc, I don't know. I listen to that and I just think, how is that possible? There were no pre-licensing safety trials on any of these vaccines. And these, I guess he's talking about going all the way back to polio vaccines.
That's true. Absolutely true. Now, the lawsuit that I was referring to earlier, and this is an important distinction, you're absolutely correct. There's never been a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial of any of the single vaccines currently on the schedule. Never. But now go up a step further, which is more egregious. If you're going to mix all of these, 88 different vaccine antigens to the same person, they have to be tested in combination in a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial, not just individually, but combined. And that's what the lawsuit is over. And this is very serious because it's one could make the case, you don't care about the individual vaccines, but when you combine them, just say in the first 12 months of life or in pregnancy, never been done. So I am so ecstatic. And Trump is so bold because this came from Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, he listened to parents for sure, moms in particular, who said they literally just want choice. Now, this doesn't mean the vaccines aren't available. You'll be able to make the choice to get them if you want. I think it's amazing to me, though. What is it, the Academy of Pediatrics? They're coming out and they're totally blasting President Trump and RFK Jr. for this. I think they're totally in bed with Big Pharma. They don't like the idea of these doctors, of parents having choices. What do you make of the Academy of Pediatrics coming out and blasting this decision?
The American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, is a fascist, communist dictatorship based on no science, pushing transgender surgery in young people and pushing maximum vaccination poisons on children. They have the data and they know it. Grant, there's now 12 studies of vaccinated versus unvaccinated children, and every single one of them show a huge risk of disease burden, chronic disease, and death in those vaccinated.
I guess, how does this happen? That the American Academy of Pediatrics, you would think if you went into pediatric medicine, there's not a more noble trip down your career path than to help children. How do they get so corrupted? How does something like that happen?
Well, I think my co-authors, I've published extensively on this, including my main co-author, who happens to be my wife, who is an attorney, and we executed, mostly Maggie Thorpe, JD, MCAP, a Freedom of Information Act request to HHS concerning the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which is on par with the American Academy of Pediatrics. And Grant, what we found and what we proved and published, and it's on my website, we received about 1,400 pages between HHS and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Listen, these medical organizations are NGOs, non-governmental organizations. That is totally inappropriate. They're totally separate. But what they did was they pulled off an under the table, a confidential, private, illegal, and unethical agreement where there was a massive money transfer from HHS, your taxpayer dollars, to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Listen, Grant, this is worse than Tim Walz. This is worse than the nonsense and the chicanery and the fraud in Minnesota, because it's affecting our children's lives. So we proved that. These organizations, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology, the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, are giving the middle finger today and yesterday and over the last few months to President Trump and to Bobby Kennedy. And they need to be demolished, torn into 1,000 pieces and thrown into the wind, because they're all bloody corrupt, just like Tim Walz.
Does the corruption stem from the flow of money from Big Pharma?
Yes.
That simple.
Yes.
What do we do to stop it? How do we, I mean, I know this is probably a start. I mean, this is more than just a policy shift. I don't think this is a minor policy shift. I think this is earthquake shattering policy shift, at least to Big Pharma. This is how they make their money off of all these vaccines.
Yeah. Number one, we need to repeal the Vaccine Injury Act, the 1986 Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. Listen, I don't mean to be hard. These bastards have killed and injured tens of thousands of children, maybe millions of children, maybe multiple tens of millions of children around the world by this horrible Childhood Vaccination Injury Act. You say, well, that was just the United States of America. You're right. But as goes the United States of America, so goes the rest of the world.
All right.
So that's number one. And number two, because they'll get their asses sued off for trillions of dollars if that were repealed. And good, put them the hell out of business.
Yeah.
They don't belong in business. They're corrupt, fraudulent, corporate, kleptocratic organization that owns our government.
So if we go under the premise that it was the sheer number of vaccines given at any given moment that really was the main cause, it seems to be like Dr. McCullough seems to believe that, their defense is going to be, well, my, hepatitis A shot is safe. How are we supposed to test it with Johnson & Johnson, who's offering up an MMR shot? We didn't know that it would be mixed. That's somebody else's responsibility.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the shot schedule went, I think they deleted 7 or 8 shots from 18 to 11.
Yeah.
But again, you're right. There were really 80, 88 or 83, depending on which combination, because these are given in multiple injections with
Right.
multiple antigens in them. So, I think that's very, very important. It's the sheer number of the burden, especially in a child in the first year of life.
Yeah.
So this is what has caused countless numbers of children and families to be destroyed with a sudden infant death syndrome. This was a relatively new thing. It doesn't occur, it's rare in the first months of life. It peaks with the vaccination schedule in the first year of life. And, I've talked to a countless number of people. 80% of the sudden infant death syndrome, a beautiful, normal child of God, created in God's image, killed by sudden infant death syndrome. 80% of them occur very close after a vaccine. And it's the same thing with autism. I don't have moms coming up to me and say, oh, my baby went severely autistic before I got the vaccine. I've never heard of such a case in the world. Mm-hmm. No, it's always after the vaccine, sometimes within an hour, sometimes within a few weeks.
Mm-hmm. I guess you've got to weigh the risk reward, right? I'll try to oversimplify this. If, say, it causes sudden infant death syndrome, 1 out of 1 million babies would get it with, an MMR shot or whatever. And I'm just making up the numbers here. But 1 out of 100,000 babies would get MMR that could die from that. Well, then you weigh the risk, right? But we can't even say that these shots have actually prevented the diseases from occurring. Is that correct? Like polio is a great example of this.
That's right.
The polio vaccine came out, it was already eradicated, but nobody knows that. Nobody even talks about that.
Grant, you're spot on. Not only was it totally, allegedly totally eradicated from the vaccine, which is nonsense. It's public health and measures that we've talked about before. But here's the other thing. There's been nomenclature change. Let me give you an example. The Guillain-Barré syndrome and transverse myelitis. These are like new names for an identical disease that polio was. So, people don't use the name polio anymore. They use, Guillain-Barré syndrome or transverse myelitis. I think a lot of the narrative of the history of not just the polio vaccine, but all vaccines has been hijacked by the pharmaceutical propagandists.
So, do you think that Guillain-Barré syndrome, that's like what you get half your face paralyzed, right? Things like, do you think that? No, is that not it? No.
Guillain-Barré is a deadly disease. This is a disease that has a very classical presentation. And by the way, I just had a pregnant woman come down with Guillain-Barré syndrome and almost died.
So what are the symptoms of Guillain-Barré?
It starts with paralysis and numbness in the feet, and it goes all the way up to the spinal cord, and you can't breathe, and you die, or you get put on a ventilator. And if my patient survives, she may be permanently damaged.
Do you think?
Very, very important. She got it 2 weeks when she was pregnant after the influenza vaccine. And I went and investigated the government database. Grant, there's 3,100 cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome associated after the influenza vaccine. Now, the VAERS database only samples 1% of cases. So, multiply that times 100. We're looking at over 300,000 cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome after flu vaccine. And by the way, the flu vaccine is a sham. It's a lie. It needs to be completely removed because why? 75% of those hospitalizations for influenza individuals, they had the bloody flu vaccine. It doesn't work. And Guillain-Barré syndrome is only one of hundreds of complications.
Do you think Guillain-Barré is a form of polio and they just renamed it?
Yes, I do. That's right.
So how do we prove that beyond a reasonable doubt?
Well, I think that any clinician, knows that how do you differentiate a transverse myelitis or a Guillain-Barré syndrome from polio? We didn't have PCR,
Right.
back polymerase chain reaction diagnostics back in the 60s, the 50s. We didn't have that. So, you look at the symptoms of polio and you look at Guillain-Barré syndrome, they sure,
Boy, that's
they're identical looking to me.
is anybody else talking about this? Because I haven't really heard that, and I talked to a lot of doctors about this stuff.
I'm sure that other experts like myself have talked about that. I'm certain they have. And if somebody disagrees with me,
well,
contact me.
This is the great thing about you and Dr. McCullough and all the rest of the wellness companies. You're fully willing to debate all these things. Nobody will debate you, though, because you can back everything up with the facts that you've research studied, and that's why they don't want to come anywhere near you to discuss all this stuff. It's also why I don't think you ever get sued by anybody, Doc.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, Maggie Thorpe, JD, and Jim Thorpe breaking that FOIA request and making you look at me in interviews over the last 6 years. I blasted them. I've called them every name in the book, and they've threatened my license. They don't dare sue me because they know I'm right. They know they're wrong, and there's a legal process that full well, called discovery.
Do you know
if they get?
We've been doing this for a while. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if I ever told you. The first time I ever interviewed you, you came on here and you blasted. And I was thinking, oh, my Lord, I'm going to get sued by all these farming companies. And you know what? The more I talk to you, the more I realize you're right. The more I talk to the other wellness company doctors and realize, man, we're on to something here. They can't sue because they'd have to give up everything. They'd have to give up. It's called discovery. And God forbid Dr. James Thorpe and your wife got involved in discovery from the pharmaceutical companies, the jig would be up for good, I think.
Yeah, not sure about the pharmaceutical companies. They can't come after me, but the NGO is good. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Board, and I've blasted them. I've completely blasted them. I've called out names. George Wendell, who was the executive director of the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they sent out a threatening letter on September 27th, 2021. They all colluded, my three organizations, and they said, you will follow our protocol, or you will lose your license in all the states, and you will lose your board certification. That is communism.
Yeah.
That's communism. And I got so angry. Listen, I was an examiner. I was an examiner in Dallas, Texas for the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology. I've been honored by these three organizations my entire career. And so I tried to get a hold of the executive director. He threatened me again.
You would think that doctor, patient, decision-making, what's best for the patient, should be left to the doctor and the patient, not some group in some office complex someplace at a headquarters in a city that's hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from the doctor and patient. This is like the same thing I scream and yell about when Washington wants to get control of how we run politics in Texas. I don't need a bureaucrat in Washington telling us how to do things in Texas, just like I don't need some doctor in an office someplace at their headquarters in whatever city they are telling you and me, Doc, on how we should be proceeding in the treatment of me. It's my body, but that's an argument that I'm afraid is going to continue for a very, very long time. All right, before we continue this conversation, Doc, I want to remind people about this new product that the wellness company has out. This drop, folks, I'm going to tell you something from a personal standpoint. I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I don't need drop. I have gone through my process. I'm right where I want to be as far as my weight goes. Now, thankfully, I was never overweight because I took fitness as a very, very big part of my life. Because of that, I've done a lot of research. These GLP-1s, these are bad news, folks. They eat away at your muscle. This is the Ozempics of the world. You start shooting that up. You want to know why you lose weight? Because it starts eating away your muscle. And so your muscle weighs more than the fat does. So you start to see weight loss, but it's the wrong kind of weight loss. This is why this product drop from the wellness company is really pretty amazing, because it is peptide based. And that's what you want to see when you're talking about stuff like this. You don't need a prescription medication. Drop, as I said, is totally peptide based. It's all natural. And it works by curbing your appetite. It works by eating away at that fat. The formulations of this, only the wellness company can come up with products like this. So I would urge you, go to twc.health/Grant. If you're serious about your New Year's resolution, consider using the product Drop. Grant 100 gets you $100 off of your first order. So Grant 100 get you $100 off of this Drop product, and I'm hearing only great things about it. So consider the peptide Drop, and no needles, no taste to this, reduced cravings, all of it. You're gonna love it. All right, twc.health/Grant. Use that promo code Grant for $100 off the product Drop. What a great way to start your new year off. All right, we're continuing our conversation with Dr. Thorpe. Dr. Thorpe, let me play a quick soundbite from Nicholas Holscher, who I know you know. He works closely with Dr. McCullough. He's been on this idea about the number of vaccines increasing the idea of creating autism or causing autism. Listen to what he had said.
Cross-national study comparing vaccine rates and autism rates. And that found very, very strong correlations across about 12 countries. The more vaccines the countries gave or recommended, the higher their autism rates were. And so the U.S. and Canada and a few others are in the what was called the critical risk zone. We have terrible vaccine policies, highest vaccine rates. And then there was other countries like Denmark, and Norway and other European countries in what was called the low-risk protective zone. They gave the least amount of vaccines, and they had the least amount of autism cases. And so what we need to do now is, and apparently it's happening according to a directive issued by Trump the other day, where we are reanalyzing the entire vaccination schedule to.
All right, so that was before, Doc. The order came out, and they have now reduced it from virtually 17 diseases to 11 diseases, as we talked about the doses, as many as 88 doses of vaccine down to about 30. Nicholas basically backs up what you say. So I guess my last question for you as we wrap up here is, what is your message to the CDC for them to continue moving forward? Would you like to see more vaccines? Because remaining on the list, MMR, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, chickenpox, HPV, 2 forms of HIV, influenza, and pneumococcal vaccine as well. So those remain on the list. Would you like to see some of those come off?
What I would like to see, Grant, is each one of those evaluated in a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial individually and then collectively together. And if the pharmaceutical companies are afraid to do that because it's kind of like the Henry Ford Hospital study, right? They don't want to see or publish the data that they found in their study because it's so damning. So I would like to see, and not a pharmaceutical company. I want a group of investigators who are extensively published, like Dr. McCullough, like myself, I'm extensively, and a private organization. Look, at what's really interesting is, you talk about Nick Holscher. That young man is on fire. And Peter McCullough is on fire. Peter McCullough, I would argue, I was really disappointed that he wasn't placed at the very top in the pinnacle. That's where he should have been, but God had better plans for him. The McCullough Foundation has literally changed the scape, not just in the United States of America, but globally, because people are listening to the data that Dr. McCullough and the McCullough Foundation have published. And Nick Hulscher is just dynamite. And, he's, I think, their only fellow, but they have several scholars, Dr. Nathaniel Mead, physician assistant Claire Rogers, Kirsten Cosgrove, and I've published, although I'm not a part of the McCullough Foundation, I've published with all these individuals as well.
Well, this is really a tribute to the Wellness Company because all of you working together, certainly a team effort to get the word out. And I don't know if we'd be in the position where we are if it wasn't for doctors like you and Dr. McCullough and so many others at the Wellness Company that have been speaking out about this and really forcing the hand of government. Right now, it seems to be somewhat of a willing hand of those at the very top. I don't think it's a willing hand of those middle managers still inside CDC and FDA. I think the deep state, the bureaucrats are still doing everything they can to push back against this. But that's where we come in, Doc, and we'll keep pushing. And I wish you the best of a 2026 coming up and great things to come, Doctor.
You look great. God bless you and have a great 2026.
Well, great work to you, Doc, and we will talk again soon for sure. A reminder to you folks, the Wellness Company, besides Drop, they have so many great products. I just got the Immune Defense, the nasal spray, and the throat spray. I probably started a little late, as you can tell. I got a little cough going, but I did start that, and I'm eager because speaking of Dr. McCullough, he thinks that this is just one of the greatest products out there now. So again, you can go to twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. Look at that. I got to do this here so you can see this. Look at this. Bingo. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. I promise you won't regret it. All right. Real America's Voice show tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. God bless you. Stinchfield's Army rolls. We'll see you soon, everybody.